Hi everybody, Monsignor Ritchie once again, coming from St. Patrick's Cathedral here in New York City, speaking to all of our virtual parishioners and the parishioners who are sitting in the seats right here today. Before I get to the questions, I just want to tell you all about my 50th anniversary. Now, on May 29th, 1971, my classmates and I were ordained right here at St. Patrick's Cathedral. As a matter of fact, on the top step where the rug is now, there was no rug in those days. That's where I was ordained by Cardinal Cook on that day 50 years ago. A little interesting story. For the ordination mass, you needed a ticket, at least for the good seats. And so one of my mother's cousins hadn't gotten her ticket. So I was outside the front of the cathedral looking for her, and I finally found her, and I gave her her ticket. And then as I was on my way back inside the cathedral, I ran into my parents, and my dad said, "Bobby, just wait here," because he had a photographer with him. And so we posed for pictures right in front of the bronze doors of the cathedral. And then all of a sudden I looked at my watch, and I said, "Oh no, I gotta go." So I rushed into the cathedral, and I went down the steps into the sacristy. And as I'm going down, the procession is coming up the stairs, and they said to me, "Oh, we thought you changed your mind," which would have made a huge difference in the story of my life from that point on. Of course, I didn't. And then 10 years after I was ordained, so in 1981, I was the director of youth ministry at the time for the diocese, and I celebrated a big mass at one of our retreat houses, and then we had a party afterwards in the retreat house. And somebody said to me, "Well, Bob, this is only 10 years. Usually you wait till you're 25 or 50 years ordained." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to last for 25 years. So in those days, that was it was right after the council, and there was a lot of priests leaving and things like that. So I said, well, hopefully I will make 25, and here I am making 50. So when we were ordained, there were 20 of us ordained for the Archdiocese of New York. 6 of them during these years have passed away. 5 have left the priesthood. 5 are priests who have retired, and there are 4 of us who are still working. So if you want to know about my class, that's what's happening. So this Saturday night at 5:30, we will celebrate, I will celebrate 50 years as a priest. I want to invite all of you who are virtual parishioners. It will be live streamed, and I will be very happy to give you a special blessing for the virtual parishioners and the ones who are here in the church also. Most of my family and many of my friends will be here celebrating the anniversary of 50 years as a priest. So it will be live streamed at 5:30 on Saturday, May the 29th, this coming Saturday. And of course, as with all of our stuff, it will be archived afterwards. So if you can't see it at 5:30 on Saturday, you can archive it later on or see it in the archives. And hopefully it'll be a great celebration. And I'll be very happy to have all of my virtual parishioners there, as well as my actual parishioners. So, getting to the Q's and A's. This comes from the Philippines. My question is, what are the names of the organist, the cantors, and the readers during the Spanish Mass on Sundays? Now, when I first came to St. Patrick's Cathedral, we would have Spanish Masses every now and then to celebrate different feasts of Our Blessed Lady or the patron saints of different Latin American countries. When I came here, I had been in 2 parishes before, and I was the Spanish speaker at both of those places. So when I came here to St. Patrick's, I didn't want to lose my Spanish. So after I was here 6 months, I went to the Cardinal Egan at the time, and I said, "Your Eminence, I would like to start a Spanish Mass at St. Patrick's." So he kind of looked at me and he said, "Well, I don't know if we need it." And I said, "Well, yeah, you're probably right. We probably don't need it, but it certainly would be good for the Archdiocese to have a Mass in Spanish at the cathedral." And so he said, all right, try it for 6 months and see what happens. Well, we tried it for 6 months and it was very successful. We would have pre-COVID, of course, between 400 and 800 people every Sunday at 4 o'clock. And so we've been going for 16 years. So it's been very effective, and we're very happy to have the Spanish Mass on Sundays. The organist for the Mass is usually Daniel, who is the organist for many of the other celebrations. Sometimes Michael can be the organist. And the cantors, we have 3 cantors, Jorge, Alex, and Grace. They are our usual cantors, and they kind of just take turns. And we have a number of readers, AJ Ojeda Pons, Marcial Raldon, Vicente Bonilla, Paola Palacios, Maria Galvez, and Jose Restrepo. So those are our readers and our cantors and the organist. So that is from my friend from the Philippines. Here's a question from Tennessee. My question is kind of a show and tell. Oh, that's right. Can you go through each garment that a priest wears? I think I'll have to try that next week when I can bring the vestments out with me. I didn't remember that this was one of the questions today. Another question. Now, this is exactly how it's written, so I don't want you to think that these are my words. The guy that shadows the cardinal, is he a priest? Yes. He is the cardinal's secretary. His name is Father Stephen Reese. Does he stay with him where he goes? Yes, he travels with the cardinal when the cardinal visits parishes and other places in the archdiocese. Sometimes when the cardinal goes to Rome, Father Stephen is with him. Sometimes when he goes home to his family in St. Louis, Father Stephen doesn't go to that. But he is his secretary, and he is the 3rd secretary Cardinal Dolan has had since he started. He likes to limit the secretary's job to 5 years. So Father James Cruz was his secretary for 5 years, and Father James Ferreira was secretary for 5 years, and now Father Stephen Reese is the secretary until, for at least for these years. Another question, why do you do the creed at the beginning of the Mass and the cardinal does not? I think the question really has to do with the penitential rite. I'm not really sure of that, but at the beginning of the Mass, we begin in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, and then we do the penitential rite. There are different forms of the penitential rite. I do usually the Confiteor, that prayer. The cardinal does a different one. That's the way he goes to do the penitential rite. There are options. Usually I do one option, and the cardinal does a different one. So my friend says, I'm sure I'll have more questions in the future, so I'm very happy to answer all of this lady's questions. From Tennessee. This is not a question, but it's kind of a statement, and it's an interesting statement. Just listen to it. Dear Monsignor Ritchie, a quick note to thank you for wishing my husband, Bud Ryan, a happy 75th birthday. He was truly surprised and appreciated your shout-out. It made his day. He mentioned this was not his first national TV exposure, since he was on the Howdy Doody show in the 1950s. He wants you to know that you are much more profound than Buffalo Bill. Well, that's good to hear. Next time we're in New York, we'll love to see you. So thank you very much for Bud and Pat Ryan for their nice words. When I was a little boy, that was one of the shows I watched all the time too, the Howdy Doody show. I wasn't as lucky as Bud. I never got on it, but I would watch it, and maybe I saw him one day many years ago. Dear Monsignor, wondering how much input a religious has in their assignments. Well, if you're talking about, let's talk about the priest of the Archdiocese. I am a member of the Personnel Board, so we meet, again, pre-COVID would be the normal way of we would meet in a committee, and the needs of the archdiocese. We need pastors here, assistant pastors there, school priests. So we would be aware of the needs of the diocese and where we needed to assign priests as pastors or as assistants. And so we would talk about the qualities of the people that were putting their names in and suggesting that they be made pastor here or there. And then we would evaluate then, and we would make a recommendation to the cardinal, and the cardinal would decide either agree with us or not agree with us, and place the different priests in the different assignments. Religious orders are different from that, and they have their own way of assigning their own members. So I can't answer that for religious orders. Very often, religious orders have a limit of a certain number of years in each assignment, and then people just get moved. Is there input? Very often there is input in religious life and in the priesthood where the person, the man or woman, can say, I think this would be a good fit for me. Ultimately, the religious and the priests are at the service of their religious order, of the diocese, and they basically accept where they're put, even if it's not exactly what they want. How do promotions happen? That's a great question. Basically, for us priests, one of the things that we learn in the seminary is that we are here to serve the people of God. Usually in New York in a different parish, and that's what I did for all of my years until I'm up here. I spent some time working in youth ministry, but I also worked in a parish, and I was very happy in the two different parishes I was in before I came here. So I was assigned to St. Patrick's Cathedral in 2006. Was it a promotion? I think many people would think that it was, but the reality of the situation is I was a pastor in one place, then I was a pastor in a second place, now I'm a pastor in a third place, which is St. Patrick's. It's certainly bigger than any place I've been before, but it's basically doing the same thing, being a pastor of a parish. It gets a little more complicated here, but that's what I was ordained to do, to be a parish priest, and that's hopefully what I will do until I finally retire, whenever that happens. How do you learn to become a Monsignor? Well, I've said this many times. A Monsignor, the word Monsignor, is a title of honor in the Catholic Church. It's not something that you work up to. It's not something that you study about and learn to be a Monsignor. It's a title of honor that the Holy Father gives to a priest for either because of something very special he's done or because of the position that he has that kind of requires some kind of identifying honor to the person who's doing the job. Now, I became a Monsignor not because of anything I've done, but because I'm the rector here at St. Patrick's, and that kind of comes along with the territory, as they would say. But But the other thing is, people say, well, there are priests and there are Monsignors. Monsignor is just a priest. I'm just a parish priest. I have a title because I'm here at St. Patrick's, but you should always remember that a Monsignor is just a title. For a person who has a special responsibility. It doesn't make him any different from an ordinary priest, because that's exactly what he still is, an ordinary priest that happens to have this title. So that was from my friend in Colorado. So, can you please explain the prefaces used during Eucharistic prayers? How chosen, other than a few of the obvious? Well, if you remember during the Mass, and you'll see it tomorrow morning when we celebrate Mass, before we come, as the beginning of the Eucharistic prayer, that's what we call it, we have what is called a preface. And there are many, many prefaces. There are some prefaces for Easter, for Advent, for Lent, prefaces of the saints, prefaces of the Blessed Virgin, prefaces of St. Peter and St. Paul, prefaces for the dead, for prayers for the dead. So there are many, many of them. I don't know exactly the number. They are they have been traditionally composed by the liturgical people in Rome, and then translated into the languages of the different countries. Obviously, ours is English, and they basically speak about whatever the celebration is. So if it's during the time of Advent, preparing for Christmas, the preface would talk about the Advent prayers or the Advent orientation toward Christmas. Same thing for Lent. When it's a preface of a Saint's Day, the preface would include information about all the saints and how they are part of the universal church. So the preface leads into the Holy, 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 which continues, and after that is continued the Eucharistic prayer. So it's the beginning of the liturgy of the Eucharist. It's the beginning of the Eucharistic prayer, excuse me, not the liturgy of the Eucharist. And it has a theme depending on what Mass is being celebrated that day. Okay. This comes from Virginia, this next question. I am 84, and for all my years have abstained from meat on Friday during Lent. And he read somewhere in some publication, this is what it says: Catholics 60 years old are no longer required to abstain from meat on the Fridays of Lent. I don't think that's true. Catholics who are over 60 do not have to fast on the fast days. So the fast days are in Lent, as you know, are Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So if a person is over 59 and a half or 60 years of age, that person does not have to fast. Now, I think most 60-year-old or older would still fast if their health was good enough. So the obligation is not there, but in fact, I think many people, even though they are of age, would still want to be part of the universal celebration of Lent that the Church goes through, of fasting on those on those 2 days, and sometimes on the Fridays. So I think if this is quoted correctly from this publication, and it says that if you're over 60, you don't have to abstain from meat. That's not. I don't think that's true. I think from 14 years and up until for all of your life on the Fridays of Lent, Catholics are to abstain from meat, although they don't have to fast on the fast days. Okay. I hope that he says he was unable to find a clarification in writing, so I hope that answers it. So I think the information is not correct. I think the over 60 rule concerns fasting and not abstinence, and everyone is over 14. Everyone is obligated to abstain from meat on Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, and the other Fridays of Lent. Okay, 2 questions for your Tuesday Q&A. What is your favorite saint? Well, I basically have to say 2. As I was growing up, I had a great devotion to Saint Damien, the leper from Molokai in Hawaii. And we just had a beautiful Mass for him 2 weeks ago. And we had a delegation from Flanders, where he came from, and from Hawaii, where he gave his life to the lepers of the island where he was. So I always had a great devotion to him. He was like one of my heroes that I read about when I was a young boy and a teenager. So Saint Damien has always been one of my very, very favorite saints. And then on the other side, of course, Saint Patrick. Who other than Saint Patrick would be one of my favorite saints? Not just because I'm here as the rector of St. Patrick's Cathedral, but growing up, being Irish American, St. Patrick's Day was so important. St. Patrick was someone whose life I studied, read about in Butler's Lives of the Saints. That was one of the first saints that I read about. And obviously being here and having St. Patrick, as part of my address, I have to make him one of my favorite saints. So St. Patrick and St. Damien are probably two of my favorites. Of course, I love all the saints, but those two special. Is there a particular Bible verse that you have that have been special throughout your priesthood? It's one of the Psalms is always something that I turn to, and it's an absolutely beautiful psalm. It's 139. It was used by Francis Thompson as the basis for one of his English poems. It's a story of God understanding me, understanding my thoughts from afar, my journeys and my rest you scrutinize. With all my ways you are familiar. So that's a wonderful psalm for not only for me, but for everybody. Psalm 139. So, okay, this question comes from New Jersey. Several questions. Can you fill us in on what happens when you enter the seminary? That's a great question. The seminary in my time consisted of 4 years of college and 4 years of theology. Now, many people go to a regular college and then after college come into the seminary for theology. In our day, in my day, when I graduated Cardinal Hayes High School, I went right into the minor seminary, which was called Cathedral College. And so for 2 years, I attended college on West End Avenue, New York, and lived at home. And then after those 2 years, I moved up to St. Joseph's Seminary in Yonkers, and I was there for the second 2 years of college, and then for my 4 years of theology. So what do you learn? Well, the courses that you take, again, in our time, were courses in philosophy, in language, in Greek, in Latin, some mathematics, certainly English, the usual college liberal arts education, with an emphasis as you got to the third and fourth year in college, an emphasis on philosophy. So we had that would have been our major in philosophy. And then when we finished the college course, then we went into the theology course, and we studied moral theology, biblical theology, dogma, doctrinal theology. We studied biblical Greek. We had courses in English literature, graduate courses. So the 4 years before you are ordained are concentrated on theological education for the priest on a higher level than he would ever have gotten in college or any other source. So after 4 years of seminary theology, then ordinarily a man is ordained to the priesthood, and that's the way it happened with my classmates. So you can be in the in the diocesan priesthood. You're in the seminary 4 years at least after graduating college. Sometimes there's an extra year of pastoral experience that some priests take. My class, we didn't have to do that. So it's usually for diocesan priests about 4 years, maybe 5 years. Religious orders, some of them are much longer. The Jesuits, for example, are much longer than that before you are ordained a priest. But each order has its own rules and its own timeline. Can you give us a glimpse of what you and the other priests staff do on an average day at St. Patrick's? Well, pre-COVID, let's talk about that. Pre-COVID, we would have 7 masses every day, from the morning until the evening. We would have 2 hours of confessions every day, and the priest would be available in the office for visitors to come in, sometimes with problems, sometimes to arrange baptisms or weddings, and all of the priests would take turns in dealing with all of those areas. I would also be involved in the administration of running the parish and all of the details of keeping St. Patrick's running, and looking and paying all the bills when I had the money. So the other priests don't have to worry about that, but we're all involved in all of the ministries, pastoral ministries. So there's baptisms, there's weddings, there's confessions, there's masses. The one things that we are not involved in because of where St. Patrick's is, there are very few children who live in the area. So we don't have First Holy Communion and confirmation programs. We do have an adult education program that we run during the year also. So all of us, there are 5 of us priests on the cathedral staff, and we kind of work together and we take turns doing the different things. COVID, of course, has reduced everything. We, instead of 7 masses a day, we have 2 masses a day. Instead of 8 masses on Sunday, we have 3 masses. Now in September, because we're working to get away from the restrictions that we've had because of COVID, we're hoping at the end of the summer in September to open everything up and go back, maybe not to 7 masses, at least 5 masses a day, and then we'll see if we can expand that as the year goes on. And we hope to do that when we turn that corner that we're all hoping to turn very, very soon. Do pets go to heaven? That's a question I can't answer. I certainly hope to see Brian and Snowy and Lexington and my mother's dogs and her cats, and I hope so, but I don't know. I don't know what heaven is like. All I know is that we're promised at heaven we will have perfect happiness with God. And if perfect happiness includes the other people in our lives and even the pets in our lives, then we'll leave that to God to decide. So this is a debate that somebody has with their friend. I can't solve the debate question for you. Okay, this one comes from Ohio. It's an interesting question. I never heard of this. She's been watching a PBS special called The Midwives. Now, I don't know anything about it, but she said, you probably wouldn't know anything about it because of the title. And it's about a congregation of sisters, of religious nuns in England that their ministry was to be midwives, and they would take care especially of the poor. But it's an Anglican order. It's not a Catholic order. And she said, did the Catholic Church ever have an order like this? As far as I know, that's probably no. The answer would be that there was not an order of religious sisters with their ministry basically of being midwives. But there are many religious orders going all the way back more than 1,000 years to religious orders of women and of men taking care of the health needs of, especially of the poor, the health needs of pilgrims. And of course, some of that would have included being a midwife at certain times. So there was, as far as I know, no specifically oriented religious order that would take this as their one main ministry, but certainly it was involved. That ministry was involved in many religious orders over the centuries. Okay. For the past few weeks at Sunday Mass, the opening and ending, I got to go. This is the last question. The procession is being led by what I would call a double cross. So if you look at the cross that leads the procession on Sundays, it's the usual crucifix, but on top of the parallel bar is another one. And the reason for that is the cross that is used when an archbishop is being the celebrant of a Mass. So the Archbishop of New York, whenever he celebrates Mass, Cardinal Dolan, that crucifix, that cross, that processional cross would be used. When it's myself or an ordinary priest or even an ordinary bishop, it would be a regular cross, processional cross that you'll see. But when you see what he calls the double cross, it's because the celebrant is an archbishop. In our case, usually Cardinal Dolan. So that's the answer to that one. And we have a couple more, but I'll have to wait till next week for them. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your patience with me. And I hope that many, many of you will join me Saturday night for our celebration of 50 years of priesthood of yours truly. May God bless you all, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I'll be out for Mass in a few moments.